The leash burned across Brendan Cross's palm before he even understood why, because Rex had already planted his front paws in the school lot and made a sound low in his throat that he only made when something was very wrong. "Hold up!" Brendan called out. "Hold up right now!" Sergeant Naomi Park was on the far side of the moving truck, and her voice came back sharp and small at the same time. "Kaiser's doing it too! Something's in there. Before we go any further, comment down below and tell me what part of the world you're listening from, and hit that subscribe button so you never miss a story like this one." It was a Tuesday morning in the last week of July, just past 7, and Millbrook Elementary was supposed to be locked up tight for another 2 weeks of summer break. The parking lot behind the cafeteria was a wide slab of black asphalt that shimmered even at that hour, a heat haze already lifting off the painted lines. A 26-foot rental truck had rolled up to the back doors at 6:30, right on the paperwork the district had emailed the night before, and the two movers with clipboards had waved politely as the K9 team crossed the lot for a routine sweep. Nothing had felt wrong until Rex, a 4-year-old Belgian Malinois with a black mask and eyes the color of good whiskey, planted his front paws and refused to move another inch. Brendan crouched down beside him. Rex was not a dog who spooked, and he was not a dog who lied. He had cleared warehouses, cleared trailers on the interstate, cleared the auditorium at Millbrook Elementary itself in April when a threat letter turned out to be nothing. He had never once given a hard sit at a target that turned up empty, and now his shoulders were rigid and his ears were pinned forward and his nose was working the seam under the truck's roll door like he was reading a book. Naomi came around from the far side of the trailer, and Kaiser, her older German shepherd, did exactly the same thing. Nose high, then low, then a hard sit that meant something was inside that no child should ever see near a school. Kaiser did not sit for lost car keys. Kaiser sat for cadavers, for narcotics, and for people who had been sealed away from the air. "Sarge," Brendan said, and his voice sounded like it belonged to somebody else. "We need everyone on this lot to freeze right now." The two movers were standing about 8 feet apart at the tail of the truck. The older one was maybe 50, with a grey goatee and a khaki shirt that had a name patch that said Rick. The younger one was barely 20, tall and thin, with a summer sunburn across his cheekbones and eyes that would not stop moving. He kept looking at the older man like he was waiting to be told what to say. Principal Rebecca Hines came running from the front office in a navy blazer she had thrown on over a T-shirt that said Millbrook Reads. She had a manila folder in one hand and her phone in the other, and her face was already ahead of her feet. "Officer Cross, what's happening? Everything's fine. This pickup was arranged by the district. I signed off on it Monday morning. It's furniture from the 2 old kindergarten rooms. We're donating the desks to that youth center in Hensley." "Ma'am," Brendan said, "I need you to step back onto the sidewalk. I need you to lock every gate on this property, and I need you to do it now. And I need you to trust me for the next 5 minutes, even if it doesn't make sense." Rebecca looked at the folder in her hand, and then at the two movers, and then at the dogs, both of them still holding their sits like statues. Something in her face rearranged itself. She turned on her heel and went for the gate. Naomi asked the older mover for identification. Rick handed over a Michigan driver's license, which was odd on its own, since the paperwork had listed a company out of Ohio. The name on the license was Richard Allen Foley, born 1974. The name on the pickup order was Kevin Bauer. Naomi held the two documents side by side and did not raise her voice, but the temperature around her dropped anyway. "Mr. Foley," she said, "who is Kevin Bauer to you?" "He's my boss," Rick said without hesitation, and his eyes did not blink. "He couldn't make it. He asked me to cover this run." "And your co-worker there, what's his name?" "That's Tyler. He's my nephew. He rides with me on the summer runs." The young man, Ty, did not look up. He looked at his boots, and the toe of the right boot began to tap against the asphalt in a fast, uneven rhythm, and a single tear rolled down his sunburned cheek and dripped off his jaw. He wiped it away with the back of his wrist, and then another one came, and then he made a small, choked sound that was not a word. "Mr. Foley," Naomi said, "would you step over to my vehicle for a moment? Officer Cross is going to stay right here with your nephew." Rick's hand came up, palm out, apologetic. "Ma'am, I need to make a quick call. My wife is at a doctor's appointment and I promised I would check in." He was already turning, his other hand reaching casually into the pocket of his khaki pants. Naomi put her flat palm against his chest, not hard, just a stop, and said no. Just that, one word, and the word had a whole police department inside it. "Take that hand out of your pocket slowly, sir. Empty." Rick took his hand out of his pocket. It was empty. He looked at the two dogs, still sitting, still fixed on the back of the truck, and for the first time his composure cracked a hair at the edge. He said, "You don't understand what you're about to do." Brendan felt the hair on his arms lift. Ty had started to sob without sound, his shoulders jerking, and Brendan stepped closer to him and said very quietly, "Son, look at me. Is there anybody in that truck?" Ty looked at him. His eyes were the exact green of pond water, and they were wide open now, and he nodded once, small and quick, like he was afraid the movement itself would cost him something. Then he said, in a voice that barely reached across the space between them, "Please don't let him hurt me. I didn't want to. He said if I didn't help him, he'd tell my mum I stole from her. Please, she's in there. She's little. Please." That was when Brendan knew the paperwork was a costume, and the truck was the crime. Naomi already had Rick against the side of her cruiser. She read him his rights in a voice steady as a metronome, while Brendan stepped Ty back onto the sidewalk and made him sit down on the curb with his hands on his knees where Brendan could see them. Backup was already coming. 2 Millbrook units, and Sergeant Park had called dispatch to send the county sheriff and the FBI's local field office, because if what she suspected was true, this was not going to be a city case. Brendan reached for the truck's roll door with hands that felt very far away from him. He rolled it up in one smooth motion, and the smell hit him first, a mix of sun-warm plastic and a faint sourness underneath that made his stomach clench. Stacked desks, little plastic chairs, the red and blue kind with chrome legs, still with tape on the bottoms where names had been. A crate of old library books, a rolled-up rug. It looked exactly like what it was supposed to look like, and Rex went straight past all of it, straight to the back of the trailer, and lay down flat on his belly with his nose 2 inches from the plywood wall. Naomi's dog Kaiser jumped up into the trailer and scratched twice at the base of that plywood, one scratch, then a pause, then another. Then he backed up and sat and looked at Naomi, and Naomi said very quietly, "It's a false wall. Cross, get me the pry bar out of my trunk." He got it. He handed it up. She wedged the flat end under the seam at the top corner of the plywood, and it came away with a splintering sound that echoed in the metal box like a gunshot. Behind the false wall was a crawl space, maybe 4 feet deep and just wide enough for a small person to lie flat. Old moving blankets lined the floor of it. There was a plastic gallon jug of warm water, half full. There was a cell phone with the battery pulled out. There was a wrapper from a granola bar. And there was a 9-year-old girl in a purple t-shirt with a horse on the front, curled on her side with her knees drawn up, one arm under her head, staring straight at Rex. Her name was Emma Torres, and she had been missing from a county 3 hours south since Saturday night. Emma did not scream when the door opened. She did not cry. She did not move. She only stared at Rex, and Rex, who had been trained since he was 8 weeks old to work explosives and narcotics and lost persons, did the thing that no one had ever trained him to do exactly the way he did it. He lay flat on his belly and inched forward, one paw at a time, the way handlers train dogs to approach frightened children, until his nose was 6 inches from her nose. Then he waited. Emma reached out one small hand and touched the top of his head. Rex closed his eyes. "Hi, sweetheart," Naomi said, and her voice had gone soft, the voice of a mother, not a sergeant. Naomi had 2 daughters at home, 7 and 11, and Brendan saw her jaw shake for just a second before she locked it down. "Hi, my name's Naomi. I'm a police officer. That's Rex. He's a good boy. He found you. Do you want to come out?" Emma did not answer, but she moved, slowly, painfully, the way a body moves after it has been very still for a very long time. She unfolded from the crawl space 1 limb at a time, and Naomi did not touch her, only held out her hand palm up like an offering. And after a long second, Emma took it. She was barefoot. Her feet were pale and clean, and her ankles were thin. She had a bruise on her cheekbone that was already turning yellow at the edges. She smelled like sweat and like the plastic of the water jug. And when Naomi lifted her down out of the trailer, she weighed almost nothing. Brendan looked away because he could not have anyone see his face right then. He looked past Emma at Rex, who was standing up in the crawl space now, tail low, ears soft, watching her go. Detective Anthony Vega arrived within 20 minutes. He was a compact man in his 50s with a mustache going white and eyes that had seen everything and gone quiet about it. Emma's mother, Melissa Torres, came out of the second cruiser behind him. She was still in the sweatshirt she had worn for 3 days. It was grey and had the logo of a car dealership on the chest, and there was dried food on the sleeve. When she saw Emma sitting on the tailgate of the ambulance that had pulled up on the grass, she made a sound that Brendan would remember for the rest of his life. It was not a word. It was the sound the body makes when the thing you have not allowed yourself to hope for turns out to be real. Melissa ran. She scooped Emma up off the tailgate and folded around her, and neither of them made another sound for a long time. The paramedic backed up 2 steps and pretended to look at her clipboard. The younger mover, Tyler Whitaker, told them everything before the interview room door had even closed. He told them that his real name was Tyler, and he had just turned 21, and he worked at a gas station in a town called Delton, Illinois, and Rick Foley had come in about 8 weeks ago on the graveyard shift and started talking to him. Rick had asked if he wanted to make some real money over the summer. Tyler had said yes. What his mother did not know was that he had already borrowed almost $4,000 from her, drawer money she kept in a mason jar under the kitchen sink for the electric bill, and he had spent most of it on a girl in Peoria who was not returning his calls anymore. Rick had told him he could pay it back in 1 weekend, 2 weekends max. All he had to do was ride along on a couple of jobs and help load stuff. Rick had said the stuff was furniture. Tyler had believed him for the first 2 jobs, because the first 2 jobs really had been furniture. On the third one, in a rest stop parking lot outside Springfield, Rick had made him help carry a rolled-up sleeping bag into the back of the truck. The sleeping bag had been heavy in the middle, in a way sleeping bags are not heavy. Tyler had known then. He had not run. He said into the little metal microphone on Vega's desk that he had not run because he had not known how. He said it in a voice that had gone completely empty. Vega asked him where the girl in the truck had come from. Tyler said Saturday night from a park in a town called Ashwood. He said Rick had told him to wait in the truck. He said Rick had come back carrying her, and she was already quiet. And he did not know what Rick had given her, but she had slept for most of Sunday. He said they had held her in a storage unit outside a town called Hensley, 40 miles east of Millbrook, until early this morning, when they loaded her into the false wall to bring her north. "Is there anyone else?" Vega asked. Tyler nodded. He was crying again, silently, and his hands were flat on the table in front of him, and he was trying very hard to hold still. "There's a boy," he said, "in the storage unit. Rick was going to go back for him tomorrow. He said the buyer wanted them separately. Please, he's little. He's really little. I don't know his name." Vega picked up the phone. By sundown, both children were home. The boy in the storage unit was 8 years old, and his name was Marcus Reed, and he had been missing from a Walmart parking lot in Kentucky since Friday afternoon. The Hensley County Sheriff kicked in the roll door of Unit 142 at 4 in the afternoon, and Marcus was inside, sitting on a bare mattress, eating peanut butter out of a jar with his fingers. He was dehydrated, but he was alive. His father drove all night to pick him up, and when he arrived at the county hospital, he could not stand up, and 2 deputies had to help him into the elevator. Rex got a whole rotisserie chicken from Principal Hines, who cried harder than either mother had. She brought it out to the parking lot in the plastic clamshell from the grocery store and set it down on the tailgate of Brendan's truck and said, "This is not enough. I don't know what would be enough. This is what I have." Rex ate the chicken with grave dignity. Kaiser got half. The rest of the K9 unit got sandwiches from the sub shop across the street, and nobody spoke very much while they ate. Brendan drove back to the school the next morning alone. It was Wednesday, and the parking lot was empty again, and the truck was gone, hauled off to an FBI evidence garage the night before. He walked the lot in the quiet. He stood where Rex had planted his paws, and he squatted down and put his palm flat on the asphalt. And he thought about how close it had all come to being just another delivery nobody looked at twice. If Rex had been sick that morning, if Kaiser had not been on rotation, if the paperwork had come in a little cleaner, if Rebecca Hines had trusted the district's email another 5 minutes. He was still crouched there when his phone buzzed. It was Vega. Vega said, "You got a minute? Something's not adding up on our end. I want your eyes on it." Brendan drove to the county building. Vega was in a conference room on the 2nd floor with 3 FBI agents Brendan did not recognize, and a woman in her 30s in a navy suit who introduced herself as Special Agent Maria Delgado. There was a whiteboard on the wall with 3 names on it, Emma Torres, Marcus Reed, and a 3rd name Brendan had never heard before, Sophie Chen, age 7. Missing from a suburb of Detroit since June the 9th. Sophie Chen went missing 7 weeks ago, Delgado said. She had a marker in her hand and a very steady way of holding it. Her case has been dead for a month. But when we searched Rick Foley's phone last night, we found photographs. Sophie's photographs, time-stamped from mid-June. And when we searched Rick Foley's truck, we found a receipt from a storage facility outside a town called Marston, in northern Indiana, dated July the 15th. "You think she's alive?" Brendan said. "I think she was alive on July the 15th. I think somebody was still paying for a storage unit as of last week. I think whoever Kevin Bauer really is, he's still out there. And I think this operation has been moving children through the middle of the country for at least 3 months, maybe longer. Rick Foley is the driver. Tyler Whitaker is the errand boy. Kevin Bauer is the piece we don't have, and Kevin Bauer is the piece that matters." Vega slid a folder across the table to Brendan. "There's more. Your school, Millbrook. The pickup order was digitally signed by an assistant in the district office named Karen Bell. Karen Bell has worked in the district for 11 years. She is a grandmother of 4. She has never had so much as a parking ticket, and she does not remember signing that order." "She's lying," Brendan said. "Maybe. Or somebody used her credentials. We pulled the login records. The order was signed from Karen Bell's account at 10:07 on Monday night, from an IP address that belongs to a coffee shop in a strip mall 6 blocks from the district building. Karen Bell was at a Bible study at 10:07 on Monday night. 9 other women can prove it." Brendan sat down slowly. "Somebody has a key to that office." "Somebody has a key to that office," Delgado agreed. "And somebody knew that Millbrook Elementary was empty this week. And somebody knew that Rick Foley would be driving through this county on a Tuesday morning. And somebody thought a school parking lot was the safest place in the world to swap a 9-year-old out of one truck and into another. Officer Cross, I need you to help me figure out who at that school or at that district building knew what was in that truck." Brendan thought about Rebecca Hines running across the parking lot in her navy blazer with the folder in her hand. He thought about her face when he told her to lock the gates. He said, "It wasn't the principal." Probably not, but it was somebody with access, and it was somebody who knew the pickup schedule, and I want a list of everybody at that district office who logs in after 8 at night on a regular basis. I want a list by tomorrow morning. Brendan drove back to the school. He went in through the front office, where Rebecca Hines was sitting at the reception desk in a t-shirt and jeans, going through a stack of mail with a letter opener that had a plastic apple on the handle. She looked up when he came in. Her eyes were red-rimmed, and her mascara from the morning before was gone, and her hair was in a ponytail that had come loose on one side. She said, "How is she?" "She's home. She's home with her mum. She's going to be okay." "And the boy?" "He's home too." Rebecca put down the letter opener. She put both hands flat on the reception desk. She said, "I signed a form yesterday morning without reading it. I signed a lot of forms yesterday morning. It's the summer. Everybody's sending everything all at once because they want to get it done before school starts. And I was going through them at my desk while I ate a bagel. And I signed a form that had my digital signature already on it. And I just clicked confirm. I could have killed that child. I could have loaded her onto a truck and waved, 'Officer Cross, tell me, please. I need to know. Who at this school did this?'" Brendan sat down in the chair across from her desk. "That's why I'm here." She showed him the sign-in log. She showed him the key list. She showed him the after-hours access log that pulled from the security system's server. There were 4 names that came up regularly for late-night entries. The head custodian, Mr. Delaney, who was 71 and had worked at Millbrook for 34 years and lived alone in a duplex across the street, and sometimes came in at midnight because he had insomnia and there was nothing on television. The vice principal, Amanda Nguyen, who was still working through her doctorate and used the school's empty computer lab for her dissertation research. The cafeteria manager, whose son had autism and whose only quiet time to do inventory was after 10. And a name Brendan did not recognize, Kevin Bauer. Access granted May the 3rd. Brendan looked up. Rebecca said, "That's the new contractor. He does the maintenance on the HVAC system. He was hired by the district in April to service every school on the west side of the county. He's been in and out of this building all summer. He has a key to the back gate, he has a key to the mechanical room, and he has a key to the loading dock." "Officer Cross, why do you know that name?" Brendan called Vega from Rebecca's office phone. Delgado came to the school within the hour. She brought 2 agents and a subpoena for the district's contracting records, and she sat at Rebecca's reception desk and pulled up Kevin Bauer's HVAC company on her laptop. The company was called Bauer Mechanical Services LLC. It had a registered address at a UPS store in a town called Fairview. It had been formed in February of that year. Its listed employees consisted of one person, Kevin R. Bauer. It had bid on and won 5 different district maintenance contracts in April, all of them for buildings that would be largely empty during summer break. "He built himself a network," Delgado said almost to herself. "He built himself a network of empty buildings with loading docks and back gates, and he cased them for 6 weeks, and he learned everybody's schedules, and he learned when the truck deliveries were coming, and he inserted his own delivery into the calendar. Millbrook was one of a chain of drops. If we hadn't caught him here, we would have found children in 5 different school parking lots by September." Rebecca sat down hard on the floor beside the reception desk. She did not fall exactly. She just found herself on the floor. She put her head in her hands. Delgado went on. "Kevin Bauer's real name is not Kevin Bauer. We ran the fingerprints from a coffee cup Rick Foley left in the truck. Rick tried to wipe it, but he missed a partial on the lid. It hit on a hit in the National Crime Information Center. His real name is Curtis Ledbetter, age 47, from Toledo, Ohio. He served 9 years for aggravated kidnapping in the late 90s. He got out in 2008. He has been off the radar since 2014. We have his real face, we have his real name, and we have a warrant that is about to be issued for his arrest in 3 states. Where is he right now? Brendan asked. That's the problem, Delgado said. We don't know. Rick Foley won't give him up. Rick Foley says Kevin does everything by burner phone and never gives his real address. Tyler Whitaker has never met him. All Tyler knows is that Rick made phone calls to somebody Rick called the Man, and the Man told Rick where to be and when. Brendan said Rick was going to make a call. What? Yesterday morning, when Naomi stopped him, he tried to make a phone call. He said his wife was at the doctor. He was going to warn Kevin. Delgado's eyes narrowed. Rick's phone had one contact in it, a number in the memory that had no name attached. Rick called that number 22 times over the last 6 weeks. That number was disconnected as of 6:43 yesterday evening. Kevin knew. Somehow. Kevin knew within 12 hours that Rick had been picked up. Somebody at the district office told him, Brendan said. Delgado was already dialing. They arrested Karen Bell at 8 o'clock that night, not because they believed she was guilty, but because they needed to know who had used her credentials. Karen came out of her front door in her house slippers and her cardigan, and she was sobbing before the handcuffs even came out. She said, "I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about," over and over on the porch, and one of the agents finally said to her, "Ma'am, we know it wasn't you. We just need to know who has access to your computer." And Karen stopped crying and looked at the agent and said, in a voice that was suddenly very small and very steady, "I share it with my nephew." Karen's nephew was a 28-year-old man named Derek Bell, who had been living in Karen's basement since Christmas, ever since his last girlfriend had thrown his stuff out on the lawn in a suburb of Fort Wayne. Derek did IT support at the district office. Karen had gotten him the job. Karen had also let him use her computer any time he wanted because he was family and family shared. Derek had been at the district office late Monday night, doing what he told Karen was routine server maintenance. Derek was not in the basement when the agents went to look. Derek's car was not in the driveway. Derek's phone went to voicemail. Delgado stood in Karen's living room with the family photographs on the mantel behind her and the smell of pot roast still coming from the kitchen, and she said, "He's running." Brendan said, "Where would he run to?" "He would run to Kevin." Naomi called from the K9 unit. She had Kaiser and Rex ready. She had already pulled every truck stop, motel and storage facility Rick Foley had visited in the last 90 days off his cell records. There were 41 addresses. 22 of them were in the county, 2 of them were in Fairview. One of them was the UPS store where Bauer Mechanical Services listed its address. The other one was a self-storage facility on the north side of Fairview called Blue Ridge Self-Storage. "Blue Ridge is where I would go," Naomi said. "Meet me there," Brendan said. The FBI beat them to it. Delgado had already dispatched a tactical team the moment Karen said the words, "her nephew." When Brendan and Naomi rolled up on Blue Ridge Self-Storage at 10 past 10 that night, the parking lot was already full of unmarked cars and a mobile command unit, and the front gate was cordoned off with yellow tape. Delgado met them at the tape. "Unit 218, she said. "Rented in cash 3 weeks ago. The security footage from 30 minutes ago shows a red Ford Focus pulling up and a white male in his late 20s going into the unit alone. He is still inside. The vehicle out front is registered to Derek Bell." "Is anybody else in there?" Brendan asked. "That's what we don't know. That's why we want the dogs." They opened the gate. They approached the unit on foot. It was in the 3rd row of the facility, tucked between a boat trailer covered in blue tarp and a unit with a broken padlock. The lights along the alley were sodium yellow and buzzing. Rex went first. He walked with his head low and his shoulders loose, the way he walked when he was working, and he did not pull on the leash. Kaiser walked beside him. Naomi and Brendan walked behind the dogs, and behind them walked 6 agents with their hands on their weapons and their eyes on the roll doors. 20 feet from Unit 218, Rex sat down and looked at Brendan. 20 feet from Unit 218, Kaiser sat down and looked at Naomi. Brendan touched his radio and whispered, "Alert, both dogs." Delgado came up beside them. "Same as the truck. Same as the truck." She signaled the tactical team. They swept up to the roll door in a fast, silent line. One of them called out through a bullhorn, "Kevin, Curtis, Derek, whoever's in that unit, this is the FBI. Come out with your hands empty and above your head. You will not be harmed. You have 10 seconds. Nothing happened. Then something happened that Brendan would think about for a long time afterward. From inside the unit, very small and very muffled, came a child's voice. Just one word. Just the word, please. Delgado did not wait 10 seconds. The breaching team hit the roll door with a battering ram, and the door went up like a shot. And inside the unit, in the harsh light of a single work lamp on the concrete floor, stood 2 men. Curtis Ledbetter was the older one, tall and gaunt and grey, with a leather jacket and pale eyes and a strange, absent smile, as if he had already decided how this was going to end and had made his peace with it. Derek Bell was the younger one, small and pudgy and terrified, with sweat running down his face and both of his hands already coming up over his head. Behind them, in the back corner of the unit, was a girl in a pink hoodie sitting on a folded blanket with her back against a stack of cardboard boxes. Her name was Sophie Chen, and she had been missing from a suburb of Detroit since June the 9th. Curtis Ledbetter reached for the inside of his jacket. Brendan did not see who fired first. He heard the shots, 3 shots, very close together from behind him. Curtis went down at the knees and then went down the rest of the way, and his hand came out of the jacket empty. There was no gun. There had never been a gun. He had reached for a phone. Later they would find out he had been trying to send one final text, a coded word that was meant to trigger a network of buyers in 3 different states to burn evidence and disappear. He got the phone out. He did not get the text sent. Sophie Chen did not scream. Sophie Chen did what Emma Torres had done. She stared. She stared at the men who were falling and at the men who were rushing in, and then she stared at Rex, who walked into the unit past Brendan without being asked to, and lay down flat on his belly on the concrete 2 feet from her. Sophie unfolded from the corner. She crawled forward on her hands and knees. She put her hand on the top of Rex's head. Rex closed his eyes. Derek Bell was on the concrete face, down with his hands behind his back and a knee between his shoulder blades within 10 seconds. He was already talking. He was telling them everything and none of it in order. He was telling them about the buyer network, about the storage units in 4 states, about the burner phones and the payment drops, and the way his cousin Karen had never once suspected anything and would never forgive him. He was telling them that he was sorry over and over, and Delgado stopped him and said, "Save it for the interview." By midnight, 3 more children had been located. A 10-year-old girl in a farmhouse basement in Missouri, held by a woman who had answered an internet ad. A 6-year-old boy in a mobile home outside Toledo, taken from a bus stop in April. And a 14-year-old girl in Michigan, who had been runaway classified for 2 years and turned out to have been anything but. All 3 of them were alive. All 3 of them went home before sunrise, escorted by state troopers who did not say much on the drive. The buyer network burned itself down over the next 72 hours. 23 arrests in 6 states. 2 suicides in cells within the first week. A federal prosecutor in Chicago held a press conference in which she used the word ring and the word conspiracy, and she thanked the K-9 unit of the Millbrook Police Department by name, and she said the words 2-year investigation, which was not exactly true, because the investigation had lasted less than a week, from the moment Rex planted his paws in a parking lot to the moment the last door came down. But nobody argued. Curtis Ledbetter survived his wounds. He was in a hospital in Indianapolis for 6 weeks, and then he was in a federal detention facility in Illinois, and then he was in a courtroom, and he did not speak once through any of it. His attorney offered no defense. The jury needed 48 minutes. Curtis Ledbetter received 12 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole, one for each of the children they could prove he had touched, and he stood up in the orange jumpsuit when the sentence was read, and he nodded once, as if a bill he had known was coming had finally arrived. He was returned to prison in a white van, and he never made another public appearance. Rick Foley took a plea deal. He gave up 2 more names Delgado had not had, and in exchange he got 40 years instead of life. He would be 89 by the time he was eligible for parole, and he had a heart condition he had not told his doctor about, and it did not matter. Derek Bell got 25 years. He was assigned to a low-security facility in Illinois because he had cooperated fully, and on his second day inside, he was told by a guard that he was not going to enjoy the next 25 years, because everybody in that facility already knew who he was and what he had helped do. He did not enjoy the next 25 years. Karen Bell moved out of her house within a month. She could not bear to walk past the basement door. She sold the house to a young couple with a toddler, and she moved into a 2-bedroom apartment across town, and she never spoke Derek's name again, not once, not even to her sister at Thanksgiving. Tyler Whitaker got 5 years and served 2. He served them in a state facility in Illinois, and on the day he got out, his mother met him at the front gate with a Toyota Corolla and a paper bag full of clean clothes. She had lost 42 pounds while he was inside. Her hair had gone completely grey. She did not hug him for a long moment when he came out. Then she said, "Get in the car, honey. Let's go home." Tyler cried the entire drive back to Delton. He got a job at the same gas station where Rick had first talked to him because it was the only place that would hire him, and he worked the graveyard shift, and every time somebody strange came in at 3 in the morning and started making small talk, Tyler would look at their face very carefully and remember it. Emma Torres went back to school in the fall. Not to her old school. Her mother moved them to a smaller town in the same county, into a rental duplex with a fenced backyard, and Emma started 4th grade at a school where nobody knew her name and nobody asked her about her summer. For the first 3 months she did not speak in class. Her teacher, a woman named Mrs. Callahan, who had taught for 29 years, gave her a small notebook and a purple pen, and told her she could write down anything she wanted to say and slide it across the desk. Emma wrote. She wrote a lot. By Christmas she was speaking again, quietly, mostly to Mrs. Callahan, and by the following spring she was raising her hand in class and reading her book reports out loud. She got a puppy that April, a rescue, a black and tan mutt with one floppy ear, and she named him Rex. Marcus Reed went home to his father in Kentucky. His father, a man named Wayne, who worked as a diesel mechanic and had raised Marcus alone since Marcus was 3, did not let him out of his sight for 6 months. Marcus slept in Wayne's room, on a cot at the foot of the bed for the first 8 weeks, and then in his own room again with the door open, and then, slowly, with the door closed. Marcus was quiet for a long time. He did not want to talk about what had happened. Wayne did not push. When Marcus was 10, he asked Wayne if they could get a dog. Wayne said yes. They got a beagle, and Marcus named it Kaiser, and Kaiser slept at the foot of Marcus's bed every night for the next 12 years. Sophie Chen went home to her parents outside Detroit. Her parents had aged 20 years in 7 weeks. Her mother had lost her job because she had not been able to leave the house. Her father had stopped eating. When Sophie walked back through the front door of their house, it was quiet in a way nobody in that family knew how to fill. It took months. Sophie slept in her parents' bed for a full year. She did not go back to her old school. She went to a private school across town where the principal was a family friend and where the counselor was a specialist in childhood trauma. And slowly, patiently, over the course of 2 years, Sophie put herself back together. She never quite became the girl she had been on June the 9th, but she became somebody else, Somebody Sophie, somebody strong in a way 7-year-olds should never have to be strong. And by the time she was 12, she was writing letters to lawmakers about missing children. And by the time she was 15, she was standing in front of a state legislature in Michigan asking for a bill named after her friend. That friend was Emma, because Emma and Sophie became friends. Their mothers connected through the counselor's office in year 2. The two families met halfway between Detroit and southern Illinois at a state park on a Saturday in October, and the two girls looked at each other across a picnic table and did not say anything for a very long time. Then Sophie said, "Was there a dog?" And Emma said, "Yes, his name was Rex." And Sophie said, "For me too, also Rex." And they were friends for the rest of their lives. Rebecca Hines stayed at Millbrook Elementary for 6 more years. She started every school year at the first staff meeting by telling the story of the Tuesday morning in July when a canine dog named Rex refused to walk past a moving truck. She did not use the girls' names. She never used their names. But she told the story. She told it because she needed her teachers and her custodian and her cafeteria staff and her office assistants to know what to look for. She told it because she wanted them to know that a form with a signature on it was not always a form with a signature on it, and that a truck at the back of a school on a summer morning was not always a truck at the back of a school on a summer morning. She told it because the alternative, the one where nobody in that parking lot had trusted the dogs, was a version of the story she could not carry. Sergeant Naomi Park was promoted to lieutenant 6 months later. She took Kaiser with her when she moved to the county-level command position, and Kaiser worked another 3 years before he retired. When Kaiser retired, Naomi took him home. Kaiser slept on a memory foam bed in the living room and ate 1 hamburger patty every Sunday for the rest of his life. And when he died at the age of 13, of nothing but old age, Naomi buried him under the maple tree in her backyard with his ball and his favorite tug rope. Her daughters, by then teenagers, both cried harder than they had cried for anything. Karen Bell went to therapy. She did not stop going for the rest of her life. She never forgave herself for having let her nephew use her computer, and she never entirely forgave her nephew, and she never spoke to him again. And when he was released from prison at the age of 53, she did not answer the letter he sent her from a halfway house in Iowa. She kept the letter. She kept it in a shoebox at the top of her closet, sealed and unread, along with a photograph of him at 6 years old at his first communion, in a white suit with a smile that gave no warning of anything, and she carried the shoebox with her every time she moved, and she never opened the letter, and she died at the age of 82 without ever having spoken to him again. Special Agent Maria Delgado received a commendation from the Attorney General. She went to Washington to receive it. She wore a black dress that she had bought for a funeral and a pair of low heels that hurt her feet. She stood on a stage in a room with white marble columns, and she shook a very important hand, and she smiled for a photograph that would appear on the wall of her field office in Springfield for the next 20 years. She did not feel like celebrating. When she got back to her hotel that night, she took off the heels and sat on the edge of the bed and cried for 10 minutes, and then took a shower and went to bed and got up the next morning and flew home. 2 months later, she was assigned to a new case. It was a different network. It was a different set of buyers. It was a different set of children who had not yet been found. She got up every morning for the next 14 years and went to work. And she did not talk about that Tuesday morning in July, but she thought about it every single day. Detective Anthony Vega retired 3 years later. He and his wife bought a small house on a lake in Wisconsin, and he built a shed, and he taught himself to make wooden bowls on a lathe, and he sold them at a farmer's market on Saturdays. He did not miss the job. He did not miss it either. When people at the farmer's market asked him what he used to do, he said he had been a police officer for a long time, and he left it at that. Only once, at a barbecue at his brother's house, when his nephew, a college student, asked him what the most important case of his career had been, did Vega set down his beer and think for a long moment and say, "There was a Tuesday morning in July, a few years back, at an elementary school, a dog named Rex. I don't want to talk about it more than that, but that was the one." Tyler Whitaker, 7 years after he got out of prison, wrote a letter. He wrote it in longhand, on notebook paper, and he mailed it to the Millbrook Police Department. It was addressed to Officer Cross. In the letter, Tyler said that he was working as a mechanic now, that he had married a woman named Bethany who taught kindergarten, that they had a 2-year-old daughter, and that every year on July the 23rd, on the anniversary of the morning, the dogs had refused to move past the truck. He sat down and said thank you out loud into the empty living room. And he thanked Officer Cross and Sergeant Park and Rex and Kaiser and the little girl in the purple t-shirt, whose name he had learned from the news. And he thanked her too, because he said if she had not been so brave in that crawl space, if she had not stayed so still and so quiet, she would not have survived, and he would have helped kill her. And he did not know how to live with that except by living as if he had not. Brendan Cross read the letter twice. He put it in his desk drawer. He kept it there for the rest of his career. Rex worked another 6 years. He cleared more parking lots and more warehouses and more trailers on the interstate than Brendan could count. He found lost hikers and lost children and a runaway teenager, and once a woman with dementia who had walked away from her nursing home in her nightgown at 3 in the morning in December. He did not find another crawl space in a false wall of a moving truck. He did not need to. Once was enough. When Rex retired at the age of 10, Brendan bought him from the department for the ceremonial fee of $1. Rex moved into Brendan's house with Brendan and Brendan's wife and Brendan's 2 sons, and he slept on a memory foam bed at the foot of the boys' bunk beds, and he ate scrambled eggs on Saturday mornings, and he chased tennis balls in the backyard until his hips wouldn't let him anymore, and then he chased them anyway, more slowly, with his tongue hanging out sideways. He died at the age of 13, on a warm afternoon in early September, in the living room, with his head on Brendan's lap and his eyes closed, and one paw twitching gently in whatever dream he was having. Brendan and the boys buried him in the backyard under the redbud tree. Emma Torres, who was by then 15 years old and lived 4 states away, sent a card. Sophie Chen, who was by then 13, sent a card too. So did Marcus Reed, who was 11 and had drawn a picture in colored pencil of a dog with a black mask. Melissa Torres sent flowers. So did Wayne Reed. So did Sophie's parents. So did Rebecca Hines. So did Naomi Park. So did Anthony Vega, who by then was in his 70s and whose wooden bowls were sold in a gallery in Milwaukee. The card that came from Vega had 2 lines on it. "Good boy, rest now." Brendan drove to Millbrook Elementary on the morning after they buried Rex. He was in his own clothes, not his uniform. He was 53 years old. He walked out to the back parking lot behind the cafeteria. The asphalt had been resurfaced twice since the July morning 9 years earlier. There was a new dumpster. There were fresh yellow lines. The gate at the far end had been replaced. The morning was quiet. There were no trucks in the lot, and there were no dogs, and there was no crawl space and no false wall, and there was no small girl in a purple t-shirt with a horse on the front waiting to be found. Brendan crouched down and put his palm flat on the asphalt in the exact spot where Rex had planted his paws. It was warm from the sun. He stayed there for a long time. He thought about the dog, and about the little girls, and about the little boys, and about the mothers and the fathers and the principals, and the sergeants and the agents, and the terrified young man who had cried on a curb and then made a life anyway. He thought about how quickly it had all happened. He thought about how quickly it might not have happened at all. He stood up. He went back to his truck. He drove home. 2 years later, Brendan retired. On his last day, he cleaned out his desk and found the letter from Tyler Whitaker, and a photograph of Rex at 3 years old in the parking lot behind Millbrook Elementary. On the morning of the Tuesday nobody would forget, sitting at the back of a moving truck with his ears pinned forward and his shoulders rigid and his eyes fixed on something no human being in that lot had yet been able to see. Brendan took the photograph home. He put it on the mantel in the living room. It is still there. The lesson of that summer, if a summer has a lesson, is that the world is held together by the very small people who refuse to look away. A principal who signed a form without reading it and who spent the rest of her career reading every form. A grandmother who trusted the wrong nephew and who spent the rest of her life making sure no one else in her life ever went unwatched. A young man who was too scared to run at first and who ran the rest of his life toward anyone who needed him. A sergeant who put her palm flat on a man's chest and said no. An officer who felt a leash burn across his palm and slowed down long enough to listen. And a dog. Above all of them, a dog who did not know the shape of the crime he was uncovering, who did not know the shape of the child he was saving, who only knew that the smell inside that truck did not belong there, and who sat down and refused to move, and would not be persuaded, and would not be embarrassed, and would not be hurried, because he had been given the simple, holy job of telling the truth with his whole body. And he did it. If this story moved you, take a moment to like the video. Drop a comment about a moment in your own life when someone or something small refused to look the other way, and subscribe to the channel so more stories like this one can find you. Somewhere out there right now, another child is waiting to be seen. May there always be a Rex, and may there always be a Brendan, and may there always be a sergeant with a steady hand and a principal willing to lock every gate. Because in the end, it is not the size of the truck or the shape of the paperwork or the polish of the lie that decides how a Tuesday morning ends. It is whether one soul in the parking lot is brave enough to stop and to listen and to say out loud, in a voice that does not shake, "Hold up right now, hold up, there is a child in there, and we are going to bring her home."